G'day, g'day. It's Saturday again. Yama. G'day,
Yama.
ladies. How are we?
Good.
G'day, Dave. G'day, Jules. G'day, Malia. G'day, everyone out there. Thank you for joining us. So we've got ladies panel today.
G'day.
G'day. So, Sharon, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm doing great, and thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this, and I love the fact that it's Saturday for you, because that means that I get a preview of what's coming. So far, it looks great. Saturday looks great.
Yeah, we've got a nice sunny day coming.
Excellent. Actually, it's supposed to rain here, but I'm grateful for that, because we could certainly use the rain in California right now.
Oh, well, you can have ours. We've had plenty.
We will take it gladly, with gratitude.
And Jules, g'day, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yama, thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
And Malia, we got Malia this week. How are you, Malia? For anyone that doesn't know,
I am doing wonderful, amazing, and really, really good. Actually, life is going good, though it's been kind of through some hiccups last week. Maybe it's the eclipse or the moon, or I'm not quite sure what, but it's been a rough week, but we made it through.
Yeah, we're talking about that earlier, and how it just feels like the first part of this week just kind of meshed on with last week.
Right? Like they kind of melded together a little bit.
Yeah. They kind of did, didn't they? Mm-hmm. I asked Creator what was going on, and they showed me multiple things all happening at once. We got the Great Divide, we've got the Gathering, and we've got the new stuff being put together. And this is how they showed it to me. You know, say you've got a whole heap of coloured balls and you need to separate them. So as you pick up each handful, all the balls are all together and they all get jostled around, and that'll keep happening until they're actually separated. So we're all getting jostled around right now while the separation and the gathering's happening all at once. That's what I got told.
So are we in the clothes dryer of life right now?
Yeah.
I want to be fluff, and I don't want too much starch.
Yeah, we've already been through the wash. This is the fluffy part. Yeah, it's funny. So, talking about what's happening now in the future, today we're going to present you with a book. And the book is called OERA LINDA. It was published in 1876, but the actual manuscript itself is way earlier, and I must admit I've been slacking. I haven't read the whole book. And it's, when was it? It's like 803 that they reckon it comes from, something like that. So between me and the ladies here, we're going to talk about this book. The most reason I wanted to talk about it, it has in it the laws and the ways that these people used to live. So first I should tell you a bit about the book, and we're going to read it out and discuss it anyway. So this is about a group of people, the way they used to live, what happened when war came, and how, and their laws and that, and how they dealt with it. There's a bit of like a love story and all that going on, but I was interested in the laws because the position we're in the world today, we know what works and what doesn't work anymore. And looking at the laws and that in this book, I thought it'd be a really good start of how we could form the tomorrow and how we could be guided by these laws. With the book, there's three things. The one, is it real or not? Or is it just a made-up story, or is it actual rigid fair income? That's up to you to decide. I do suggest you go read the book. You can get it on a PDF online. The other thing that I found with the book was they reckon this mob, the Frisians or whatever I think they're called Frisians, they travelled further than the Vikings. And I'm thinking, wow, to travel further in the Iceland than the Vikings, perhaps you went to the outer rim. So if you want to believe that, or perhaps they just sailed. It's up to you. You read the book. We're going to discuss it today. And yeah, the reason, that's my thing about the laws, and maybe using it as a little bit of a foundation to present new ones for our future or get an idea. So I'm going to go to the ladies and find out whether they were lazy like me and only read parts of the book. So Sharon, you're first on the line. Sorry, I keep getting you, but you're first on the line. Did you check the book at all?
What I did is I kind of glanced through it, and it wasn't easy to read. But what I did was, I know that you had brought this up before in one of our roundtable chats. And I know you'd brought up like the universal law. There were parts of the book that I think would be easy to discuss because we could go over the laws. Like there was one where the universal laws, and then free as text, prosperity awaits the free, at last they shall see me again. And just kind of going over these ideas about what people look like and how they live their lives for different events, right? Like the rights of mothers and kings, and just prosperity. And I think that's basically where you wanted to take tonight, was going over these laws, and if we could incorporate them. Like the universal law, the first one, all free-born men are equal, wherefore they must all have equal rights on sea and land, and all that Alda has given. And I'm guessing that is kind of a god or creator maybe, or something. I would like to see more of that as well, something along those lines, that we see each other as equals and we treat each other as equals. And I think part of that is awakening to the game that's being played, and not playing that game, and not being a pawn in the game. Not, I'd like to share, like for instance, something simple as the really mega rich people wear really mega rich clothes, where the regular people wear regular clothes. And I'm thinking about the Queen. I was watching when she was, in her casket supposedly, and you had the king, you had all the pomp and circumstance of the rich people with their $1,000 suits and things, and then you had the regular people. And it's because we've chosen to be regular people. We've chosen to wear those clothes. We've chosen to be pawns in this game, where there's the queen who wears the mega rich clothes, and the princes and all that crap. And then you've got the regular people that wear puffy jackets and poor clothes. And why are we settling for that? So if you go back to just number one, the universal law, we're all equal. If we want to walk around the street with really rich clothes because we're equal too, we can. You know what I mean? It's all this programming of letting yourself look like how they expect you to be in the game. I think that's where I'm going with this. Right? And you're muted. Luna, you're muted. Go ahead.
Funny you brought that up, because you know how ripped jeans are in fashion?
Yes.
I refuse to wear them because I know that they're trying to emulate poverty upon us. So because it does. Ripped jeans are on, you've got old jeans and they're ripped, you can't afford new ones. In our day, that's what it meant. I know it's a fashion statement now, but that's what they're trying to put on.
Yeah, costume. A friend of mine used to call our clothes costumes. He would always refer to them as costumes. What a lovely costume. And he'd say, that's a lovely costume you have on today.
I like that, yeah.
And I like that too. And he used to be in the Ren Fair. Remember the Renaissance? Well, in America, we have this thing called the Renaissance Fair.
I love that, yeah, we have that.
And you can go and you can pretend to be with the Queen, and the actors all have to stay They have to, use that speech from that time. They all have to stay in character, just like at Disneyland. And you have the queen and all the serfs and the servants, and I think if you look at your clothes and the way you act and how all of that stuff is, it is a statement, but it's also a costume. It is a costume. And how do we want to present ourselves, and how do we want to participate in the play or the game, or, this is like if this really is a computer simulated game, how do I show up?
Yeah, what do I wear? What's the appropriate clothing?
Well, no, seriously, what's my character look like? Right. The other thing I would share is about being older. Like, if you, and this goes for every age group, if you go to look for clothes and you buy into what somebody my age looks like, those clothes are just, I'm sorry, they're hideous. So I go to the young kids' clothes and I buy their cute t-shirts, because I'm not going to look like that other thing.
Yay.
Like, I'll be 99 and I'm still not going to go in that section of the store. So it's that kind of stuff, because the minute you allow yourself to be where they want you to look or how they want you to look, then you become it. You actually become it. You become old, you become sicker, or you become less limber, right? And then another thing, like, you go to the beauty parlor, you try to get a young haircut. Well, if the beauticians don't see you as anything but grandma, you are going to get the grandma haircut.
You are.
That's it. And you can't, and you, how do you talk them out of that? You can't. You can't. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you look like my grandma. I love my grandma, and I'm going to fix your hair like I fix hers. Because I don't want to look like your grandma.
I want to look like me.
But again, so I'm just saying, little things like that, it's all programmed.
Yep. So, sorry, I had to laugh because I recently found myself at a salon, and I was dying. And after I sat in the chair before I died, and she was like, "So what do you want?" And I'm like, "I want to get rid of this." Well, I had a baby mullet, and they were trying to like convince me it's coming back in fashion, and it's like it should have never been in fashion in the 90s. No, it's got to go. So the cut's a little bit shorter than I wanted it, but I'm mullet free.
So while you're talking there, Jules, did you get to have a look at the book?
No, because you were asking if I was as productive as you. Not only did I meet what you've done, I have far exceeded that. I've raised it a couple of decibels. I came home. I was late getting the material. I came home and I had to do some chores for tomorrow because I actually have to work. So, and then I lost all track of time yarning with some lovely people, and tonight is going to be a learning experience. I come with my cup so I can collect some knowledge.
Cool. Okay. That's all right. So, Malia, yeah, did she get a chance to? And thank you for the, what do they call them?
The little thumbnail, the graphics.
That's it. I'm looking at the thumbnail. Thank you.
Sure thing. I've been practicing with Photoshop, so any kind of like incentive, I try to just go with it if I feel inspired to do something with Photoshop. So anyways, that was fun because I found those images in my research of the OERA LINDA book, since I knew I had heard of it before, but just in passing, someone listening to somebody talking about it. And so I started researching, and there were a couple things that I felt were important to note about the origin of the book. Now, it's believed, it's written in full, what's the language? Valak or Valak or Gutenberg? Yeah, it's like Dutch with Celtic backgrounds. And 150 years ago, 1876, is when the manuscript was translated into English by the Gutenberg Foundation. So, but it was originally in this original language. It's very similar to Celtic glyphs, or Nordic glyphs, is what it looks like. It reads from left to right, which is interesting for an ancient languages. Most ancient languages read from right to left, or top to bottom in glyphs. This is not a glyph language. This is a language that is using glyphs per se, but in the form of letters. So it's moved out of the picture format and moved into the letter sounding format, which is, it changes the dynamics of the text, in my opinion, into dating it. It helps to give an understanding of how old it might actually be. Now, it itself claims that it came 1200 years before Christ, in the conception of the Grecian gods, mythology, deities, all of that. So it relies heavily on the Neptune, on Zeus, on different feminine deities too, are mentioned in the book. What I found really, really interesting, though, besides the laws that they live by, is that predominantly the book is about warrior women having a peaceful culture that integrates the whole community and provides something that brings forth the skills of each individual, right? Yeah. And maintains order, balance, in the sense so we don't get too much of negativity, if something of negativity, and the women say, or the leader women say, this man spirit has pointed out to us and these are the reasons, or this woman has caused an embarrassment. They're sent away, essentially banished from the culture, from living and practicing in their higher way of life. Well, the book talks about their culture being directly linked to the Atlantean race. And also, it's bringing forward the whole wheel, like Saint Catherine of the Wheel, the warrior woman who rules over the wheel, which is huge. You know, like that's a really, really big link, not only to the Atlanteans, to the Enochian things, but that makes me wonder, is this part of, or a companion book, or a culture that goes right next to, or gives more definition to the Tuatha De Danann, which is coming from the same location. It's Atlantean, Enochian, having a leadership of feminine aspect to it, laws that maintain order and balance. It's very, very fascinating. I got maybe through the introduction of the book and through maybe almost a third of it. So, but it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. I'm absorbing it. I find it fascinating, its links to Tuatha De Danann, though. I think it absolutely does, with the wheel in itself. And the
how long has the, how do you say it, a Tuatha De Danann? I've read about it in books and stuff. How long have they been around, and did they originate from Ireland? It seems like that's a connection, or it was.
Yep,
Okay.
originating out of Ireland, the Irish, Celtic, Norse. But see, with the Tuatha De Danann, there's not really an understanding of actual origin, except that it's coming around the same time as Catherine of Alexandria, the Alexandria Library, the Greek mythology, this kind of thing, about 1200 years before Christ. So in my research, and this is my opinion of what I've tracked of where these people may have went, the Judeo-Christian understanding of the Tuatha De Danann is following the Norse tribes, and understanding that Dan, the tribe of Dan, was that Celtic Norse connection, the Basque people. So that's where these red-headed warriors come in the Celtic tribes, and this kind of stuff happening as well. And the sea serpents, the leviathans, the stories of The ghost boats and all of that lore does come from these mythological Irish books. A lot of it, most of it.
And is it your experience now? Again, this comes from my understanding of some of the books I've read. That it was almost like they're fairies, or they're like some spiritual, mystical group. They have a lot of power.
They are considered to be the gods of the dragons and the fairies.
Right. Okay. And
the ancient
you
gods
don't
of
mess
dragons
with them,
and fairies.
right?
Yeah, no.
It's a very powerful group with a long memory.
With a very long memory and the ability to keep coming back no matter how many times you kill them. They just keep these specific women just keep coming back, and it impacts the historical line where they change. Think Cleopatra. They change the tide of battles. One woman who kings change sides because of her. So it's a very, very strong bond that comes out of the Scottish-Irish lore of this leader tribe that is feminine in aspect and matching this OERA LINDA mythology. Well, technically, we have to call it a mythology because there's no way to prove whether or not it's real, even.
You just said that, and you mentioned, you made me, for some reason, that made me think of Boadicea.
But Boadicea. Yes, Boadicea. And in fact, I think I used a close picture to Boadicea as the thumbnail image to Bilsha.
Cool.
Who was considered a sister of hers. But yeah, yes, it's the same understanding of these women leading the Scottish, Irish, and Celtic tribes into specific magical rituals, and their battle is against, they say specifically, the Magi, or the Magy, the Magi, I would pronounce it, because it's like this specific group of people that match the Aztec in essence. There's human sacrifice, there's cannibalism that going on, there's DNA mixing going on, there's stuff that we would consider is impure and a corruption to the natural order of things, in a sense.
Okay.
You know,
So
I'd ask the question too, and I'm kind of studying, but how many times have we started over? How many times has humanity started over? Like, you know, Atlantis, right? And then
Well, we've gone through 7 cycles. That's what the book says as well. We've gone through the 7 cycles. In the 7th cycle, which is what we've just closed, and entering into this final golden age is how the Maya understand it. We've been in for 10 years now. But the shift takes 10 years to happen. So technically, it's this year, 2022, that everything hangs in the balance of who will maintain the power for the next 100 years.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Oh no, this is a huge deal. This is
massive.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying yesterday that I was downtown at the store, and this woman came in out of nowhere and did a download of all this information, and that kind of thing happens all the time now, right? We're meeting each other, we're running into each other, we're chatting with each other, we're coming together, we're coming together, and I at every level, it is amazing.
Well, it's kind of like the great, I call it the sperm whale effect, and Russia does too. Russia is where I learned this from. So their Secret Service had developed this way with the sperm whale of watching the sperm whale and its behavior, understanding that this could be the mother creature of the entire ocean, having communication with every creation in the ocean, and through those vibrations to all parts of the earth. So if the sperm whale decides to emit a frequency vibration that calls certain creatures or creations to it, she can do that. She calls her babies out from the other side of the world, and they come directly to her. And she's like, in the observation of her, they could see that she had the power to do these things. It's only by standing back and letting her do what she does is she going to attract all of that she needs to accomplish what her final goal is. And nobody knows what that is. You know, in the end, no one knows what that is, but she's going to do whatever paths and steps it need to be taken, draw whatever people need to come to her in order to lay out everything for that coming law, that coming rule of the next. I've transferred a subject here. Jumps, but it merges of what I'm saying, where this of the understanding of this tribe, this Celtic tribe, and how the spirit mother of nature actually works, with possibly the sperm whale being the master communicator, the frequency testing vibrations constantly, with what that thing can do. If you know what I'm talking about, it's pretty amazing.
Well, they had a Star Trek version of episode about that, where they had to go into the past to get a whale to save in the future, because the spaceship that had come around Earth was starting to destroy it, because it kept sending the voice to the whale, waiting for it to respond, but the whales had all died. Mm-hmm. So the Star Trek, kids had to go back to the past and grab a whale. So
get a whale.
I realize this is probably not a very good.
No, that's all freaking awesome.
But it's kind of confirming what you're saying, is that's how important. I mean, that was kind of the whole, the whole thing of it too.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know if any of you have parts that you want to read out, and if you do, and you got the stuff in front of you, just let me know, and you can help me read this stuff out, because just want to read out. I'm just going to read out the laws, and if you want to read this book, I'll have to put the link in the thing later, and you can go and read it for yourself. But we'll start reading some of these, and we'll chat. We'll just stop and yarn like we have been, because there's, like Malia was saying, there's a lot of connections and a lot of good information to be heard. So, all right, I'll just read a few, and then we'll yarn, and then I'll read more. And if you want to read something out, we will, because I don't want to bore everybody. So these are the citadel laws of the government of this place, of this land, a long time ago, that was established, and this is how they lived. It'll give you an idea. And when you hear some of this stuff, especially the later ones, there's something inside you that says that's a just thing. That's how a proper way of living is, and you just know that's the right way to live, okay, compared to how we live today. So, all right, these will give you an idea of how the major things are run, and it's mostly matriarchal. So, all right, so whenever a citadel is built, the lamp belonging to it must be lighted at the original lamp in Texland, and that can only be done by the mother. Every mother shall appoint her own maidens. She may even choose those who are mothers in other towns. The mother of Texland may appoint her own successor, but should she die without having done so, the election shall take place at a general assembly of the whole nation. The mother of Texland may have 21 maidens and 7 assistants, so that there's always be 7 to attend the lamp, day and night. She may have the same number of maidens who are mothers in other towns. If a maiden wishes to marry, she must announce it to the mother and immediately resign her office before her passion shall have polluted the light, because your energy changes. That's what I figured that was. The service of the mother of each of the Burkt maidens, there shall be appointed 21 townsmen, 7 civilians of mature years, 7 warriors of mature years, and 7 seamen of mature years. Out of the 7, 3 shall retire every year and shall not be replaced by members of their own family nearer than the 4th degree, so that stops nepotism. Each may have 300 young townsmen as defenders. For this service, they must study Freya's text and laws from the sages, and they must learn wisdom from the warriors, the art of war, and from the sea kings, the skill required for distant voyages. Every year, 100 of the defenders shall return to their homes, and those that may have been wounded shall remain in the citadels. At the election of the defenders, no burgher or greveman or other person of distinction shall vote, but only the people. How honest. Every citadel shall have 50 agriculturalists chosen by the people, but only those may be chosen who are not strong enough to go to war or to go to sea. Every citadel must provide for its own sustenance and must maintain its own defence and look after its share of the general contributions. If a man is chosen to fill any office and refuses to serve, he can never become a burgher, I hope I'm saying that right, nor have any vote. And if he is already a burgher, he shall cease to be so. And we have to wonder what that is. If any man wishes to consult the mother or a burgmaid, he must apply to the secretary, who will take him to the burgmaster. He will then be examined by a surgeon to see if he is in good health. If he is passed, he shall lay aside his arms and send warriors, shall present him to the mother. Oh, that's respectful. If the affair concerns only one district, he must bring forth no less than 3 witnesses. But if it affects the whole of Friesland, he must have 21 additional witnesses in order to guard against any deceptions. If she is called upon to decide any judicial question between a Grevet man and the community, she must incline towards the side of the community in order to maintain peace, and become it is the better that one man should suffer than many. If anyone comes to the mother for advice and she is prepared to give it, she must do it immediately. If she does not know what to advise, he must remain waiting 7 days. And if she then is unable to advise, he must go away without complaining, for it is better to have no advice at all than bad advice. If a mother shall have given bad advice out of ill will, she must be killed or driven out the land, deprived of everything. If her I can't say that one, are accomplices, they are to be treated in a similar manner. If her guilt is doubtful or only suspected, it must be considered and debated, if necessary, for 21 weeks. If half the votes are against her, she must be declared innocent. If 2/3 are against her, she must wait a whole year. If the votes are then the same, she must be considered guilty, but may not be put to death. If any of the 1/3 who have voted for her wish to go away with her, they may depart with all their live and dead stock, and shall not be the less considered, since the majority may be wrong as well as the minority. Wow. So there you go. That's the first set of laws just for townships. What do you reckon? I reckon they're a pretty good way to start living. Keep it honest.
Yep.
Now, did you get a sense listening that this was in a time where women were more honored in the community? That's what I got too. And I know at one time, supposedly back, God knows how far, we were actually much more honored in the community, more valued. That's a better word.
Well,
we were more
it
valued.
was clearly matriarchal.
Yeah.
It was led by women with an understanding of she's, well, yeah, basically what you're saying, yes.
For me, when I found this and started reading it, from when I was a little girl, I remember a time where men and women were stood equal and we had the proper respect for each other. And the way this world is, it's the mother energy that is the passionate, compassionate one and all that. And they, like in my culture, the men know that, and the women have the last say. You know, the men still go about deciding things, but they present it to the women to say, hey, is this fair and honest, and is this in the heart for everyone, the land included, which we're so far away from that thinking now.
Yeah. I think people are lost. They don't know what their role is. And because I think some of this is just by nature, we are certain things, right? Just by the fact that we're female, we're not even allowed to be female anymore, right? You know, what's a woman? And no one seems to know, or a man, or whatever all that crazy stuff is, you know. And
I know, I can tell you, but I can't tell you here because we're on YouTube and we'll be censored.
Well, yeah. But you guys, you all, and I can't even say you guys anymore, but you guys get my drift.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You have a good voice, so don't worry. You can
I'm
say
not giving it up.
You're not helping anyone.
I'm not giving up that term. I'm sorry. In fact, I've started listening to lots of people. They're still using it too. But going back to this, listening to this, one of the sad things I hope we're able to heal on our planet is worldwide. I'd like to see all of this start to balance out again. All of the communities, whatever the community is, it doesn't matter, but comes back to balance where everyone is honored and everyone is appreciated and, valued. And there isn't, but I think that's the pendulum needs to swing back, and that has to be part of the healing. So just looking at this, just starting at the top, I would say the first thing is to see value in everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I think that in all of this, what's very, very important to this group of people is calendrical timekeeping of weeks and patterns of days. So they're going to put that just like the Maya did. I'm sure of it because the Maya was matriarchal as well and calendrical keeping predominantly. Is that what we're going to see is a lot of numbers. And if you think of the calendar as a cycle of sevens, then you can see this. Because just prior in the page we just read, it talks about how she needs to go through a period of 21 weeks. 21 weeks is 3 cycles of 7 weeks. So it's a perfection of cycles of sevens that's being emphasized in this first section. Now, in the second section, mathematically looking at this, reviewing it, to me, what I'm seeing is portions of time divided and how you can actually layer that because I know the calendar and how this works. This is going to metaphysically transpose as a micro macros layer that you can put into these universal laws that we're going to lay forth here to an effect that I may even be willing to put out there timidly, that they have a sense of perfection to them, universal perfection in the division of time and how to use numbers. It's giving me a little bit of chills because I didn't get to the point of actually reading through all the laws, but let's read the laws of marriage. I like this one.
The next set of laws, universal laws.
Let's put these back into effect right now because there's a lot of imbalance going on with the laws of marriage, right?
Okay, so this is a universal law. So all free men, Here, all freeborn men are equal, wherever they must all have equal rights on sea and land, and on all the Alda has given. I presume that's what they call their creator.
She would be the mother, queen, creator person, deity.
Every man may seek the wife of his choice, and every woman may bestow her hand on him who she loves. When a man takes a wife, a house and a yard must be given to him. If there is none, one must be built for him. If he has taken a wife in another village and wishes to remain, they must have him a house there, and likewise the free use of the common. To every man must be given a piece of land behind his house. No man shall have land in front of his house, still less an enclosure, unless he has performed some public service. In such a case it may be given, and the youngest son may inherit it, but after him it returns to the community. Every village shall possess a common for the general good of the chief of the village, shall take care that it is kept in good order, so that the prosperity shall find it uninjured. Every village shall have a marketplace. All the rest of the land shall be for tillage and forest. No one shall fell trees without the consent of the community or without the knowledge of the forester. The foresters are general property, and no man can appropriate them. The market changes shall not exceed 1/12 of the value of the goods, either to natives or strangers. The portion taken for the changes shall not be sold before the other goods. All the market recipients must be divided yearly into 100 parts, 3 days before the Jewel Day. The brevet man and his council shall take 20 parts, the keeper of the market 10, and his assistants 5. The Volksmoder, I hope I said that right, 1, the midwife 4, the village 10, and the poor and infirm shall have 50 parts. There shall be no usury in the market, or usurers. If any should come, it will be the duty of the maidens to make it known through the whole land, in order that such people may not be chosen for any office, because they are hard-hearted. For the sake of money, they would betray everybody, the people, the mother, their nearest relations, and even their own selves. If any man should attempt to sell diseased cattle or damaged goods for sound, the market keeper shall expel him, and the maidens shall proclaim him through the country. In early times, almost all the Finns lived together in their native land, which was called Adland, and is now submerged. They were thus far away, and we had no wars. When they were driven hitherwards and appeared as robbers, then arose the necessity of defending ourselves. And we had arms, kings, and walls. For all this, there were established regulations, and out of the regulations came fixed laws. Okay, and that's the next bit. That's really sad. They had a beautiful way of living, and then war came. And
that sounds like Atlantis. The Finns, the mermaids, the war. And
It is Atlantis.
Yeah,
it
we
is
are
the
talking about
story of
the
Atlantis.
eight spear.
It totally is. Yeah.
Yeah, it did sound like that. And even the name sounded like Atlantis.
It is Atlantean. It absolutely, yeah, for sure.
I just sometimes just want to take my head and bash it in the wall for the fact that we're so manipulated. And the other piece of this is they're walking us backwards. Like, we should be having flying cars and be so far ahead right now. It's not funny. And we're fighting over the dumbest stuff. You know, it's just stuff that's made up. It's not even real.
Yeah.
And I'm
Consumerism.
hoping that the awareness.
It's consuming itself.
Exactly. Yes. It's consuming itself. And I think the silent majority is not agreeing to this at all. We are sitting back going, no, thank you.
But being forced to comply.
Well,
Isn't that what the
I
last 2
think,
years kind of
well,
proved to us, is compliance?
I'm not sure I'd use the word compliance. Because I'm not complying. I mean,
I'm
nobody
not.
here is complying.
Exactly. But to an
Um,
essence, I am. Though I have to be honest. Like, though I haven't complied to receiving something within my body,
right.
at the same time, I've made adjustments to more easily,
Maneuver and navigate.
put a mask on my face, though I really don't like doing that. But in certain locations,
Yeah.
okay, gonna have to walk through this.
Well,
Right?
I think we had to. When okay, so maybe I'm using. I don't. Maybe the silent majority is the wrong term. I mean, I think that when things like this are going on, we can only. I think Luna made a comment and has made one. Is save the fight for the last, right? And so you need to walk through this until we get to a point where we do need to maybe enter the streets, but it's not now. We can't fight physically every battle that we have to fight.
Well, I think that the point being in this part of the transference into the next cycle is that the fight is beyond spilling blood.
Right.
It's something of standing for your values,
Yes.
for what you know is real, like
Yeah.
real tangible stuff that has survived centuries
Yeah.
in what a character is, who a person is, right? So, and that's what I think is being held in question for everybody,
Well,
down
we're
to the
not
bottom
agreeing.
line.
We're not agreeing to be their pawns,
No. Yeah.
right? We're not. Okay, if you take some of the recent
Or
events,
their pieces.
exactly. Yeah, like I'll go saying the spirit of humanity is resistant, but the mind of most is compliant. That's true, but I also think many of us are saying no, thank you, right?
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so I guess what I'm trying to say is we're coming with our energy. Our energy is saying, I'm not playing the game. And I think if you look at how hard they are working, energetically speaking, to continue to convince us, I mean, case in point, some of the players on the stage, it's like, you guys are working so hard, but we still don't buy it. We still don't buy it. We still don't buy it.
Yeah, it's the same modus operandi. That's why we still don't buy it. That's why we can say
Right.
that, because it's the same MO.
Right.
Again and again, we're seeing clones or whatever they are,
Yeah.
where they're performing some kind of rituals to themselves through the night and eating their own flesh, and we know that they are doing these things,
Yeah.
right? So they didn't change. They didn't change their ways.
No, but we're
Right.
changing ours.
Yeah, but we're not participating, and in that
Right.
sense, we didn't change either. And
I
I think it's
agree with you.
important.
I think we are changing.
I'm gonna go grim.
I
Lighten it up, Bill.
I do think we're changing. I think we you don't wake up in a vacuum. I mean, as you walk through this, whatever it is, this we're walking through, you have many epiphanies, and at that point, you continue to change. Right? I mean, as long as I studied this, as long as I was preparing, as long as I put so much time into this, I had no idea it was going to look like this. And I heard other people of our ilk and our mindset say the same thing. We knew this was coming, but we didn't know it was going to look like
It was gonna
this.
look just like this, right?
And so we're having to respond at the moment, doing the best we can to not comply. And still, I hope in a year or two or three, that's going to look different than today.
I think it will. I think it has to,
Well, yeah,
essentially, at the bottom line of it. But at the same time, like I was saying before, so much hangs. These people, these entities that would like things to stay the way they have been going for the past 100 years, and that party to stay in
longer.
power, parties, because
Yeah.
but it's still the same one, is that way of rulership, which is what we're sharing here, a different way, right?
Yeah.
So, but they would like to see that continue on for the next century, 1,000 years, portion of time. But that's not what's written. That's not what's foretold in the prophecies. That's not what is talked about on the cave walls and the different writings that we have. And they matter because through the years, those are the writings that have come true, that have proven and kept the record of time for us, so that there is some semblance of, lack of a better stone to stand on, to know of, that this was written in the stone. So because of that, we know that that is a language that we can hold on to and learn from, and how they did things then. Why does that even matter? Because I think a lot of people today in today's world are like, why does history even matter? Why would knowing about the Library of Alexandria and the history of the Celt and the Norsemen even matter right now with what we're going through? What's your answer, Luna? Like, I could feel it.
Well, that's why I'm presenting this book, because it does matter, because I've had a lot of things told to me growing up, like old people have said, like, know where you come from so you know where you're going.
Yeah.
Finding things like this, like what's written in our spirit souls, whatever you want to call it, is a knowledge, and those that can hear it, we all know that when I read these out, you've heard them somewhere before, you know that's the right way to live. And that's the way we're trying to bring that back again, because we just know. So next I'm going to read out the laws that were brought about because war came, and they obviously didn't have it before. And we all know what that's like, because it's made a cycle all the way around the world, and we've come back to the beginning. That's why we're where we are. So even in this, I found the compassion. There's still compassion. Listen, read. There's only 12 of these. So here we go. Here are the following laws which were thus established because war come about. Every Frisian must resist the assailants with such weapons as he can procure, invent and use. When a boy is 12 years old, he must devote 1 day in 7 to learn how to use his weapon. As soon as he is perfect in the use of them, they are to be given to him, and he is to be admitted as a warrior. After serving as a warrior 3 years, he may become a citizen and may have a vote in the election of the headman. When he has been 7 years a voter, he then may have a vote for the chief or king and may be himself elected. Every year he must be re-elected, except the king. All other officials are re-eligible who act according to Freya's laws. No king may be in office more than 3 years, in orders that the office may not be permanent. After an interval of 7 years, he may be elected again. If the king is killed by the enemy, his nearest relative may be a candidate to succeed him. Nearest may be, it says nearest relative may be. If he dies a natural death or if his period of service has expired, he shall not be succeeded by any blood relation nearer than the 4th degree. Those who fight with arms are not men of counsel, therefore no king must bear arms. His wisdom must be his weapons, and the love of his warriors his shield. And one thing I noticed straight away, there are no soldiers, they are warriors. And one thing I teach young people is that they are warriors, they are not soldiers. And there's a difference. And I love that as a warrior.
I love this number 12. Those who fight with arms are not men of counsel, therefore no king must bear arms. Because how many pictures have we seen with the king with, he's riding the horse, leading the troops into battle. His wisdom must be his weapon, and the love of his warriors his shield. And that is extremely powerful. And I think people forget this. I mean, first of all, you want to avoid war at all costs. But if you have to, we should be relying on wisdom and loving the people that are the protectors. That's because basically what you're saying, the love of the warriors is the shield, is this, those are the protectors and they should be honored, right? But you can't have the king out in the middle of this doing war.
Because his energy will be tainted. That one thing I note about this is all about purity of energy coming from the heart and the right place.
Right.
And that's what we're fighting for right now, is that way of life to come from the heart and the right place, and think of everybody and the land we stand on as well, and the air we breathe also. And that's what this, I mean, it's a different culture to mine, but the understandings are still the same. You've got to care for everyone. Anyone else want to comment before we move on to the next law?
I'm just so against kings and queens and all that junk. I really am turned off by all that. And I have to say, in this last probably 10 or 15 years with the crap going on in the UK, it's disgusting. Their family has been exposed for what they are. And we don't even have to go into it right now. And this whole pomp and circumstance. And there was one day where her coffin was going through the street and the music was so dark and so I just turned it off. I thought, I can't listen to this music. It was dire. It was just dire. And I thought, why are we just not done with this? And the Pope, all that, the Pope and the King and the Queen and all that junk, and
well, let me say this, Sharon.
Sure.
Originally, the language of this text would not have translated to king. It would have translated to chief, because we're looking at a tribal group.
Yeah.
So they put an English language twist on it and put king in there.
Right.
So maybe that's all that's going on. And I got to teach you how to bump the videos for your comments.
No, and Buzzachino, you have a good point. A warrior,
it's true, because I would
heart in the home, a soldier is
so
a programmed drone. That's well said.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think it's fun, and I like it because it gives me a chance to hide. And
sorry, Malia. I don't know how to change the format and still have.
I get it all the time. No, I'll show you how after we're done. It's a quick little. It's a hidden box. It's a hidden little checkbox you got to click, and then it just bumps up the videos when you do comments. But anyways, I wanted to bring up in this before we move on. I really like this, especially with the understanding again of letters to numbers, numbers to correlation of, is this a language that's built on the basic 22 glyphs?
I see that too. The three.
This is how we can link it to the two attended.
Time for everything is calculated, and it's true. They're the right amount of times for people to move through things and see them from the right lens. I noticed the whole way through that's again coming from proper living, coming from the spirit and the heart. I cannot approach this until I am proper myself. Otherwise, whatever I give will be tainted by stuff. That they would have been a beautiful people to be around. We as a modern day people, I reckon, being transported to their world, would have to go and decontaminate, I think, before we entered their village, because
it helps me to understand why, if my bloodline is what I believe it is, and all of this coming through in the Basque, in the Irish, in the Scottish, this kind of thing going on anyways, it helps me to understand why I physically cannot come into contact with most people. Like physical skin-to-skin contact. I don't do handshakes, I don't do hugs, I don't do that kind of stuff because I get physically sick. Literally sick if I touch people who eat pork, who eat things that are not clean. They don't have the same kind of level of what I have to do on a daily basis to make sure I stay clean. Does that make sense? And don't get sick is my point. So I don't get sick, which can happen really easily. anyways, not to get too personal, I hate that part too. But I want to bring it up because in these 12 things, if you don't mind, Luna, can we go back really quick?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
want to bring this up
Mhm.
on that page. So in the numbers stuff, I'm going to do a quick 12 number recap here, but I'm going to start with number 9. Number 9 is the medicine wheel. We see it with a circle and a cross. Okay, so that is going to be our target picture. It's a picture of the 4 divisions of time, the circle, the wheel, all of that is in number 9. So what do we have for number 9 here in the laws is after an interval of 7 years, the chief, he may be elected again. 7 years. Like, this proves to me is exciting, is building on to the Tuatha De Danann being based on a Judeo-Christian understanding of sevens, of tens, of 12s, and how those numbers work together in the counting of time. It's very calendrical and very base to put as the target number, as the medicine wheel number. This is the calendar is based in 7, a pattern of 7 years, 7 weeks, 7 months. All of this is how we count our days, and we get to 365 if you do it with what? Way back at the very beginning, what did she start with? 21 weeks. A counting of 3 cycles of 7. That's the key to get to 365 days with 7 sevens. It's exciting.
You've got well, you're speaking Tribe of Dan, with the stone and the cross, the Celtic
The
cross.
Celtic cross, yes.
I can't. Oh, I wish I could remember the guy's name, but he has gone and he's created the device to measure, and in real time. I'll have to find it and drop it in the link. But it's interesting because all the stuff that you're like talking, I'm not just sitting here. I've got issues with cats tonight, but I'm listening, and that just reminded me. And I wish I knew this guy's name because that's what he's got a mission, and he is. This is the guy who put the patent on the cross. There's a story behind it, and I've got so much
on the Celtic cross or the Christian cross?
The Celtic cross.
The Celtic
I've got
cross.
so
Okay.
much in the background that I can't quite focus on it. But what you're going over, it's definitely it's coming in. It's waves. I got to sit back and absorb. So I'm here with you. I'm just fascinated.
No, it's way fun. And how it is like that wheel of time, that empire of wheel understanding. And I'm using specific key trigger words because it's a whole concept. It's the breakaway civilization. It's the railroads. It's what they messed with the time 100 years ago. How they developed this land, our America free land. It's so, that's the Spirit spoke that to me yesterday and again today. This is supposed to be our free land. What happened? These last 3 years, it hasn't reflected that. We haven't reflected that.
Right.
I don't think it's been seen.
What happened?
Well, I think worldwide they have this experiment going, right? We're going to hijack the entire planet.
Globe.
Talk about arrogance.
Right.
But the way I see this too is this is their party. They've been planning, like you said, they've been planning this way longer than 100 years, but certainly for 100.
Right.
And it's the rollout. This is the rollout. This is it. This is the big, red carpet. Let's make this happen. And
Last chance, even. Right.
well, certainly with energy from all of these buffoons in our favor, many of the people that are on the red carpet are clowns, absolute clowns. and you cannot take them seriously. And we are blessed that they're there, actually, on so many levels. Thank
Yeah.
God that we have the clowns we have. Anyway, that, I just wanted to throw that out there. But
Um, back to the book, you can see where the darkness came in. The war was the first thing, right? Obviously, a people came. The darkness has approached the light. That's how I see it in reading what's happening here. And this is only just the laws, so I suggest people go back and check the book right out, because there's actually a storyline to do with these laws. So, all right. Anyone want to say anything before I move on? No, we all good? Okay. So these are the rights of the mothers and the king. So remember, this was brought about because war was coming. So they had to bring up new laws. And I think they're pretty just for pulling a rabbit out of a hat, because they'd be in a bit of a panic. Okay. If war breaks out, the mother sends her messages to the king, who sends messages to the brevet men to call the citizens to arms. The brevet men call all the citizens together and decide how many men shall be sent. All the resolutions must be immediately be sent to the mothers by messengers and witnesses. The mother considers all the resolutions and decides upon them, and with this the king as well as the people must be satisfied. When in the field, the king consults only his superior officers, but 3 citizens of the mother must be present without any voice. These citizens must send daily reports to the mother, that they may be sure in nothing is done contrary to the counsels of Freya. If the king wishes to do anything which his council opposes, he may not persist in it. If any enemy appears unexpectedly, the king's orders must be obeyed. If the king is not present, the next to him takes command, and so on in succession according to rank. If there is no leader present, one must be chosen. If there is no time to choose, anyone may come forward who feels himself capable of leading. If the king has conquered a dangerous enemy, his successors may take his name after their own. The king may, if he wishes, choose any open piece of ground for a house and ground. The ground shall be enclosed and may be so large that there shall be 700 steps to the boundary in all directions from his house. That's interesting. Another number. 7. His youngest son may inherit this, and that son's youngest son after him. Then it shall return to the community. I'll just keep going because there's only 7 of these. Here are the rules established for the security of all Freyans.
The base 7 rules. So here are the basic. So this, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm getting it right now. I'm getting a remote view of the city of Alexandria, and I'm seeing the stones being written on, specifically being written on these 7 laws at the gates of the city when you entered the city, this place. That's very, very sorry. It happens.
Yeah.
You never know what is going to happen. That triggered it. That's really neat.
So.
It's very important. Posted at the city gates. This was everyone must abide by. Across the board. Interesting.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's interesting too that the mother, along with the king, the mothers, the females, the women, along with the king, have each equal power. Like in other words, they're an important part of the decision making, and how this rolls out and what it looks like, and
Well, not only that, with the understanding of what Freya is that she has, as the mother, she has these sisters, and they are beside her on each side that are guiding and her counsel and where she's receiving her advice from, and it's this whole group understanding where the mother is like, yes, she's there, but she's not going to make a decision or a choice without her sisters beside her and all being in agreement, you know. And in the legends there's the black fella sister, and then there's the red haired sister, and then there's the yellow sister. So we have like this same common theme we see even in today's lore of witches, where we would have a redhead, a blonde, and a dark hair, a black fella, right? In the natural sense of that, and we have our where does Jules of the Flame fit in?
The flame, yeah.
She's the warrior princess that stands guard at the doors in front of everybody. She's like, you're not coming through. My name is Cena.
And you know what, Jules, I was going to say, it's like Xena was plucked out of this place from the movie.
Right? Right? Like there is something going on here, and it's unique, it's special. I think it's significant in the representations of our world today and how it's like in the past still, or where we get our ideas from, because they're molded from hundreds of years of doing this.
Me and Luna were having a good yarn last night, and we totally figured out how to save the world last night.
Yep, we did. We made a story.
And this morning
and this morning, I was up
before you went to bed.
Sleep. All right. So here's the laws established for all Frisians for their security. I wanted to say about the way that they consult the mothers. That's like in my culture. That's what we'll do. The men would go, all right, what do you reckon? They go, yeah, let's go and tell the women. They go and visit the aunties, tell them what they want to do. The aunties discuss it and then say yay or nay. So that's why I like this too. So it's like for me, looking through my lens, it's similar to our ancient culture, but in a modern way, because it's more Anyway, I like.
Luna, can I throw one thing in? I find this interesting.
Yep.
Number 12. His youngest son may inherit this, right? This is the thing that he built, the king builds.
Yep.
And that son's youngest son after him, then it shall return to the community. How often do we ever see the youngest son inherit anything? It's always the oldest son. I just thought that was interesting.
I'm really grateful you pointed that out, because I wouldn't have grabbed it before, but because you read it out, I clicked and linked immediately. That is another direct link to the tribe of Dan and the youngest son inheriting. Right?
Yeah, to me, it's just interesting, right? Because they always value the oldest, right? That son is the one, or the daughter, whatever, is the one that gets the power or the money.
The whole inheritance. That's exactly it. The 12 tribes, the inheritance.
What I like about this
son.
is you would have to
Benjamin.
nurture the younger son, because what you often see in many, many stories is the oldest gets all the, like even if you look at the king now, the oldest got all of the attention, all of the power, all the glory, the wife of and the younger son is kind of like this. They always said you have a one and a spare, right? You have an heir and a spare, versus reversing that. It's like, we need to nurture the very youngest of us, because this person needs to qualify to inherit this. They need to earn it. They need to be the people who can step in and do a good job of it. And I just want to point that out. Okay, I'm ready to move on.
Okay. All right. So here are the rules established for the security of all Frisians. Whenever new laws are made or new regulations established, they must be for the common good and not for individual advantage. Whenever in time of war, either ships or houses are destroyed, either by enemy or a matter of precaution, a general levy shall be assessed on the people to make it good again, so that no man neglect the general welfare to preserve his own interest. At the conclusion of a war, if any men are so severely wounded as to be unable to work, they shall be maintained at the public expense, and shall have the best seats at festivals, in order that the young may learn to honour them. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
If there are if there are widows or orphans, they shall likewise be maintained at the public expense, and the sons may inscribe the names of their fathers on their shields for the honour of their father. If any who have been taken prisoners shall return, they must be kept separate from the camp, because they may have obtained their liberty by making treacherous promises, and thus they may avoid keeping their promises without forfeiting their honour. If any enemies to be taken prisoner, they must be sent to the interior of the country, that they may learn our free customs. If they are afterwards set free, it must be done with kindness by the maidens, in order that we may make them comrades and friends instead of haters and enemies. Man, that speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm.
That speaks for itself. That's beautiful. Like,
Yeah, it is.
you know. All right, so now that's the land, because they remember these sea as well.
Yay, pirate time! Articles.
All right, so navigator is the word for those who take foreign voyages. Laws of the navigators. All Freya's sons have equal rights, and every stalwart youth may offer himself as a navigator to the alderman, who may not refuse him as long as there is any vacancy. The navigators may choose their own masters. The traders must be chosen and named by the community to which they belong, and the navigators have no voice in their election. If during a voyage it is found that the king is bad, If during a voyage it is found that the king is bad or incompetent, another may be put in his place, and on the return home he may make his complaint to the alderman. Hang on, I've got to focus again. If the fleet returns with profits, the sailors may divide 1/3 among themselves in the following manner: the king 12 portions, the admiral 7, the boats' wains each 2 portions, the captains 3, and the rest of the crew each get 1 part. The youngest boys each 1/3 of a portion, the second boys half a portion each, and the elder boys 2/3 of a portion each. If any have been disabled, they must be maintained at the public expense and honoured in the same way as the soldiers. If any have died on the voyage, their nearest relatives inherit their portion. Their widows and orphans must be maintained at the public expense, and if they were killed in a sea fight, their sons may bear their names and their fathers on their shields, If a top salesman is lost, his heirs shall receive a whole portion. If he was betrothed, his bride may claim 7 portions in order to erect a monument to her bridegroom, but then she must remain a widow all her life. That sucks. If the community in fighting out a fleet, if the community is fitting out a fleet, the purveyors must provide the best provisions for the voyage and for the women and children. If a sailor is worn out and poor and has no house or patrimony, one must be given him. If he does not wish for a house, his friends may take him home, and the community must bear the expense unless his friends decline to receive it. Wow. That's different. A little bit of adjustment for the sea people. Huh?
Yeah.
All right, so there's storyline. See how war makes things uncomfortable, as in you have to make compromises and adjustments. All right, so we'll go through this one. How many we got here? There's 7 again. So, and notice too how they've divided their laws up into so many. There's 12, then 7.
Mm-hmm.
All right. These are the 3 principles on which these laws are founded. Wow, there's 7 explanations for 3 principles. Okay. Everybody knows that he requires the necessaries of life, and if he cannot obtain them, he does not know how to preserve his life. All men have a natural desire to have children, and if it is not satisfied, they are not aware what evil may spring from it. Every man knows that he wishes to live free and undisturbed, and that others wish the same thing. To secure this, these laws and regulations are made. The people of Finda have also their rules and regulations, but these are not made according to what is just, only for the advantage of priests and princes. Therefore, their states are full of disputes and murder. If any man falls into a state of destitution, his case must be brought before the count by the maidens, because a high-minded Phrygian cannot bear to do that himself. If any man becomes poor because he will not work, he must be sent out of the country, because the cowardly and lazy are troublesome and ill-disposed. Therefore, they ought to be get rid of. Every young man ought to seek a bride and to be married at 25. If a young man is not married at 25, he must be driven from his home, and the younger men must avoid him. If then he will not marry, he must declare dead and leave the country, so that he may not give offence. Now, these laws are starting to sound like our culture, where they get really, really tough for the preservation of everybody else. I haven't read this part, by the way. Okay. If a man is impotent, he must openly declare that no one has anything to fear from him. Then he may come or go where he likes. Wow, that's a brave man. If after that he commits any acts of incontinence, then he must flee away. If he does not, he may be given over to the vengeance of those whom he has offended, and no one may aid him. Anyone who commits a theft shall restore it threefold. For a second offence, he shall be sent to the tin mines. The person robbed may forgive him if he pleases, but for a third offence, no one shall protect him. All right, what do you reckon about that? You reckon that's kind of fair? I reckon we need a bloke here to comment on that part.
I think that's the other side of the 2 tablets. I saw one with 7 on one side and one with 7 on the other side of the gates. So I think that's the other side. Foundational principles of their laws of understandings. And I think one of the main things that we go, oh, well, maybe why would this be married at 5 and 20? It's important the distinguishing of numbers and counting right there, because in the same way the Maya understood counting, not that we should count by tens, but by 20, that we have toes too to count by. So we can have a division of that 20 into tens and base things on tens in that sense, but to come to how to count in the teens, in the high principal numbers of the teens, we have to go into that 5 and 10 thing. And that's where the concept of 5 and 20 comes from too, because it's 5 and 2/10. 5 and all your fingers and toes. So at the point when you have completed all of your fingers and toes in one more hand, full hand, you are ready to lead and start a family, is what they're saying. And in the preservation of genealogy, especially in a place where people are only living to, on average, 45 years old, you would specifically want to have to start a family at about 25 years old. If you hadn't started by 25 years old, then you're looking at risking your family at being too old, or your family, your actuality of being able to raise that child to its full skills of 25 are lessened greatly. And so the preservation of culture, what was stated way back in the beginning of, it is better that one man be sent away than the whole community suffer.
That's right.
That's the same mentality, I think, right there.
I say to people, young people, between 23 and 25 is a good age to start a family. And then when I read that, I thought, that's because you're sowing your wild oats, so to speak. You've seen what's around, and you've got space. You've settled enough to have space and room for these things. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Rules are made. These rules are made for angry people.
I was just going to comment on number 2.
Yeah.
If any man becomes poor because he will not work, he must be sent out of the country, because the cowardly and lazy are troublesome and ill-disposed. Therefore, they ought to be got rid of.
I like that
use
one.
that little rule right now. I'll leave it at that.
I
was thinking that too. For me, number 7.
Just
anyone
common sense right there, right? Isn't that a lot of common sense?
Yeah.
Like, who is happy about somebody who won't work and clean up even their own back end?
Well, and then make you feel guilty because you're not.
Because you're not doing it for them.
Well, it's more to that too, because having a lot of children, I know how it ever feels. What is it? One person's laziness makes more work for the non-lazy people.
That's right.
Twice as much work for everybody
Well,
else.
and I also think this is where we get the corruption. That number 2, this is where
the servitude, entitlement attitude. Yeah, big time. And it walks hand in hand with the clothes that were put on if we enter that party, a group of people, right? Like, who wants to dress that way? Well, you have to dress that way. You're going to be shunned if you walk into that crowd and you look like a redhead hippie out of the 70s show. They're just going to be like, what are you doing here? You don't belong. Right?
Well, I think this is, I mean, if you look at all of these, they seem a bit harsh, but on the other hand, what you're doing is holding a line, a boundary to the society, where we're actually putting boundaries down, because we find that if we don't hold this boundary, our village, our lifestyle will be corrupted. And not only that, you will be corrupted. We're not supporting you to be your best you. It seems a bit harsh on some level in some ways, but I think about all our politicians. I mean, they're all fallen number 2.
Yeah.
That is
so that group of people that want to maintain the power, that
exactly.
No, you're not going to do what it took again to do what it took to get it last time. Like, no.
And they corrupt the whole village, essentially.
Exactly. Well, that same mentality, just barely like what we read, it's better to send one man out who's lazy, who's not producing any kind of work, and not willing to get married and start his family and produce what is necessary for the community in a warrior sense, and how all men are warriors, and that understanding. Earlier it read, every child starts with a weapon at a certain age, and they get 1 day a week with it until they become proficient, and then it becomes one with them, essentially, is what I'm understanding, after a certain age, and they are a warrior for the country.
But that only come in after war came. They had to do that, and they
Right.
had to make adjustments.
Right.
Which
And they're
is
using the words here, cowardly and lazy. I mean,
Yeah.
I think again, that's what we're seeing, right? And many people are commenting that our leaders are less evolved than us, right? We're seeing them as cowardly and lazy. They are cowardly, and they're absolutely unaccountable for everything they do, right? They don't care as long as they get to keep the power. And so you're seeing this. It's like, why would you follow them? You wouldn't. There's no reason. They don't, you know, they're not showing you anything you want. So this is really interesting. It kind of goes against my feeling about freedom, you know, having freedom, but on the other hand, there's also rules and there's also boundaries. So it's kind of a balance.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up too, Nano, because freedom is a built base word of Frida, as well as Friday. Frida is all this understanding, this Frisian, Friedan understanding.
Yeah.
It really is. I think it does link back to this matriarchal, Celtic, Norse understanding of this is the way that we have our tribes. This is how we keep our rules, so that we can keep our order of who we are.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got similar ways. Like for young men that won't behave properly in community, they get taken out by the elder men into another camp, and they can spend their whole life out there if they don't choose to act appropriately.
No, see, we don't have that. They get given jobs like lawyers and accountants and real estate agents and the places of power and political stance.
So we need a whole heap of maidens to run around the world and declare these are the corrupt people, don't hire them, don't deal with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's a point.
Women, we're good at women's, we can do that. Yeah.
I need my duck call. I found this little toy. All I have to do is shake it. And it's like a duck call. It goes quack, 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 quack.
This one's really important, especially for today. When I saw it, I haven't read it yet, but when I just saw it, then I thought, whoa, I need to post this on the street. These rules are made for angry people.
So I like the title of the segment of the next thing.
Yeah. All right,
but it describes what that is in the very first sentence. It gives definition. This is what we mean by that word.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Or angry people, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We're gonna hear that what that
That's
is.
what we call straight talk.
Yeah, here you go.
All right. These rules are made for angry people. If a man in a passion or out of ill will breaks another's limb or puts out an eye or a tooth, he must pay with whatever the injured man demands. If he cannot pay, he must suffer the same injury as he has done to the other. If he refuses this, he must appeal to the Burgertmarge sorry if I'm butchering these words and you're listening, in order to be sent to work in the iron or tin mines until he has expiated his crime under the general law. If a man is so wicked as to kill a Frisian, he must forfeit his own life. But if the Burgertmarge can send him to the tin mines for his life before he is taken, she may do so. All right, that woman doing the judging there must be another thing. If the prisoner can prove by proper witness that the death was accidental, he may go free. But if it happens a second time, he must go to the tin mines in order to avoid any unseemly hatred or vengeance.
Luna,
Yeah.
it's Burga Magid.
Bergt mug. I don't. Yeah, I can't get it.
Magid. So, or like Magi. It's that Magi sound, and then Burda. It's Danish, essentially.
Yeah, with
Think
my
Danish, Scottish with the G.
my tongue would roll that and go brr 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 gatamar. It'd be sound like more like that. Okay. So that's pretty fair income for angry people. If they keep being angry, like, yeah, in our culture, we'd remove them, they'd get speared or whatever, then they'd get dealt with. And, okay, so these are the rules concerning bastards. Or bastards, as you'd say over there. All right. If any man sets fire to another's house, he is no Frisian. He is a bastard. Notice these are different. I think the language change, because in our language that means something different, bastard. All right, so he's a bastard. If he is caught in the act, he must be thrown into the fire, and wherever he may flee, he shall never be secure from the avenging justice. No true Frisian shall speak ill of the faults of his neighbours. If any man injures himself, but does no harm to others, he must be his own judge. But if he becomes so bad that he is dangerous to others, they must bring it before the count. But if instead of going to the count, a man accuses another behind his back, he must be put on the pillory in the marketplace and then sent out of the country. But not to the tin mines, because even there a backbiter is to be feared. After we do this show, we'll all go and be forgiven. Anyway, if any man should prove a traitor and show to our enemies the paths leading to our places of refuge, or creep into them by night, he must be the offspring of Finda. He must be burned. The sailors must take his mother and all his relations to a desolate island, and there scatter his ashes in order that no poisonous herbs may spring from them. The maidens must curse his name in all the states, in order that no child may be called by his name, and that his ancestry may
repudiate him.
Thank you, him. If anyone wants to have Rick take over and read, you're quite welcome to.
I would, but I'm squinting looking at this on the screen.
You want me to read the last paragraph?
Yes, please.
Okay. War had come to an end, but famine came in its place. There were 3 men who each stole a sack of corn from different owners, but they were all caught. The first owner brought his thief to the judge, and the maiden said everywhere that he had done right. The second owner took the corn away from his thief and let him go in peace. The maiden said he has done well. The third owner went to the thief's house, and when he saw what misery was there, he went and brought a wagon load of necessities to relieve their distress. Freya's maidens came around him and wrote his deed in the eternal book and wiped out all his sins. This was recorded to the Aramoder, I said that wrong, and she had made it known over the whole country. So again, this is very interesting. To me, it's about forgiveness and understanding hunger and understanding, what maybe motivates people like something like this.
Yeah.
It's interesting when they have compassion versus when, like, if you go up to some 1 or 2 or 3, if you mess with these guys, they throw you in the fire. And fire, it looks like fire was a serious thing back then. If you messed with fire and you burned someone's house down, it's kind of like in the Old West, if you mess with someone's horse.
Yeah, that was a no-no.
There's no mercy.
Well, I think too, in the concept of setting another man's house on fire
Right.
is to say their whole dwelling place,
Yeah.
which would be a hut in which the family would be. So you're setting the whole family on fire,
Yeah.
essentially.
Exactly.
So that's why I think it's like number one, not tolerated. You don't.
Yeah.
This is a bastard to us. This is
Super
not.
serious.
Yeah, this is super serious. And I think it's really interesting that they come to the conclusion that what brings forth this spirit or something, entity, something that is bringing forth burning of another person's house is a backbiter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's a backbiter? A backbiter is a bad thing jumped on your back. I've seen them on
A
people.
backbiter, a claw biter. We would refer to that almost as the hitchhiker, right?
Of an entity, like an entity.
A hitchhiker entity,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
backbiter. Yeah.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
What I liked is about the ashes weren't to be buried
Someone's
on the
family.
land because poisonous herbs will grow from it. Because even in the ashes, the bad energy is still there. So don't grow anything out of those ashes. So they're mindful even of the energy of things as they change. You know.
Well, and I think in the verbiage of this, it's almost spoken as if pretty clearly that even if this person flees who set fire to another person's house, that it will continue to haunt this one until he burns himself.
Right. Exactly.
That's pretty strong verbiage right there. Pretty strong language.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
there
more
wasn't
there.
this deviant behavior. Like obviously murder wasn't tolerated. Any kind of injury, like fighting or trying to hurt somebody or take their eye out or hurt their arms, well, that's the same thing's going to happen to you. Period. And they're going to write that. By the way, we're going to do that to you.
We got strict rules like that. If you're going to break the law, this is what happens. There's no two buts about it, and that's the way it is, and it prevents a lot of things. Honestly,
I wonder if in society is all crime committed by people who are mentally ill, or because there's no boundaries, or because we see, is it because they're poor? Is it because, you know what I mean? It's like, what are the real reasons people commit certain crimes? But I read a lot of murder mysteries, so there's a lot of people, but a lot of it starts with child abuse. And it starts very early in somebody's life, right? And not everybody that goes through that ends up a criminal, but if you go back to even some of these ones that we've seen, it all started with neglect and, usually some kind of child abuse and, some very unhappy childhood or traumas or things like that, which you grow up and they're not addressed. So I had some kind of understanding of this can happen from generation to generation, and we're going to put a stop to it. We're not going to let.
So it does. Wait, Luna. If you scroll back a little bit, it goes into talking about, which is what I was really looking for right there, how the Gertman and many of the followers of Helenia. So the Helenia is this Tuatha Hellenistic understanding of what I've been talking about all along, the connection to the wheel, St. Catherine of the Wheel.
I'm just quickly going through it because it's a very lengthy book.
Oh yeah, you went into, you're reading it really fast, speed read it.
What I want to say to people is it's worth reading all of it, and if you want to understand who the people are that we read out in the laws, it goes through and tells you about them, like the Gertman. It'll tell you who they are and what they do. So you've
in
heard
the Greek, what year? The 1500s.
They are, what they do, more about it. Go read the book. I'm just checking to make sure there's any laws. If there's any more laws.
I think that was the only portion that talks about the laws.
I think so. The rest of it just tells you about everything. There's a lot of reading matter there.
The history.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, all right. It looks like I don't want to read anymore.
Ooh, that's a neat seal.
Can I
I like
read?
that seal.
There's something here, how the bad time came. I printed it out on Word so I can see it.
I was going to say that if there's anything that you want to read out, please do.
I just
Yeah,
like,
please read how the bad time came. Oh, that's important. Thank you.
I just want to throw this out there. This is how the bad time came. And this sounds like just like right now, which is
What we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
during the whole summer of
That's how that
sun had been hid behind the clouds as if unwilling to look upon the earth. There was perpetual calm, and the damp mist hung like a wet sail over the houses and marshes. The air was heavy and oppressive, and in men's hearts was neither joy nor cheerfulness. In the midst of this stillness, the earth began to tremble as if she were dying. The mountains opened to vomit forth fire and flames. Some sank into the bosom of the earth, and in other places, mountains rose out of the plain. Land, right? Called by the seafaring,
Outland, yeah.
you're right, Outland, called by the seafaring people, Outland disappeared, and the wild waves rose so high over the hills and dale that everything was buried in the sea. Many people were swallowed by the earth, and others who had escaped the fire perished in the water. And it was not only in Finda's land that the earth vomited fire, but also in Twiskland, Germany. Whole forests were burned, one after the other, and when the wind blew from the quarter, our land was covered with ashes. Rivers changed their course, and at their mouths, new islands were formed of sand and drift. And I mostly wanted to read that last paragraph because we have so many fires in California. Like it has been very bad the last, which I believe has been orchestrated. During 3 years, this continued, but at length it ceased, and forests became visible. Many countries were submerged, and in other places, land rose above the sea, and the wood was destroyed through half of Germany. Troops of Finda's people came and settled in the empty places. Our dispersed people were exterminated or made slaves. Then watchfulness was doubly impressed upon us, and time taught us that union is force.
That's interesting.
Interesting. So
it really is describing the time of when the crystal pyramids were destroyed.
Right. Atlanta.
And what would have happened in those countries way over there. And the big question, did anybody survive it? Obviously, these ones did. They went far enough north, were high enough in the mountains, saw it coming, they wrote about it, prophesied that it was coming, withstood it, described it to the best of their ability.
Right.
What happened? But that was, I think they're clearly out of the land of Atlant. They sank into the bottoms of the earth, and in other place mountains rose out of the plain. But Outland, called by the seafaring people Atlant, disappeared. And the wild waves rose so high over her hill and dale that everything was buried in the sea. Well, that's what happened to the Gulf of Mexico, to where that crystal pyramid was. We know that now.
It sounds like, the flash freeze. Sounds like they were in the flash freeze.
Yeah, it was when the meteorite came down or something blew up the pyramid. Now, this book is specifically blaming a certain group of people, the Magi or the Majid. This group of people orchestrating the destruction of this is the palace of the Atlantans, of the Atlant, or the seafaring people called the Atlant. This is just like...
Yeah, and those that came
right?
that survived Atlantis went on. Egypt is one of the places.
Well, because it was not, it obviously was being used as another of their base locations. If you know of the Yucatan pyramids or of the crystal skulls, the Ambrose Bierce mystery, we're looking at some really, really, really interesting connections to the crystal pyramids being the Atlantean people. And is this, are these people claiming they are the same, one and the same people, and that was their city? Yeah? and this is their way of life, and this is how things are set up. Right?
Makes sense, because I know it rings true in our spirits, right? When I
It
start
does.
reading it, rings so true in the spirits. And I've always run around going, we don't live proper, we don't live proper. That's proper way of living. Everyone's looked after. Everything's looked after.
In a mother matriarchal point of way, where we still have that equalizing balance of the masculine chief, the masculine king.
I thought too that depending on what you believe in that, but so if you believe we're only one land and there's other lands beyond the ice ring, they could have been beyond the ice ring before it became ice.
True.
And then instantly become ice, because I read in a part that I was reading where they were better sailors than the Vikings, and I found that shocking because I love the Vikings, as everyone knows. Shout out to Sid. And they were better sailors than that, and that's what made me think, oh, they must have come from further away, like they sailed further outward of the ring. And then reading that part, how the bad time came, the instant freeze, that makes sense.
Yeah, the instant freeze. It would have caused an instant freeze at the extreme northern parts and southern hemispheres.
I read something where it said that
That's fascinating.
the fellas that come to war on this mob come from somewhere else, and they actually put the freeze. They made, because they had technology, and they froze it on purpose, so they could control and take over. And we're at the other end of that stick. That's how I saw it. We're at the other end of that. That was the beginning, and this is the end. It's come full circle. That's how I see it. So anyway, I thought that was great. I hope everyone liked it.
I did.
I hope anyone out there that wants to write a new way for the world to follow reads this and gets a better foundation of how a proper living should be. I'm really glad that we presented it as for women, because it's a matriarchal system, and we need to bring that back to balance. So, all right, and that'll bring us back to the beginning of the book where we're talking about the balance of the women. I noticed when I was a teenager, women started getting more power than they ever had in our recent history. And I thought that was really good. But then, and how I describe it is, we were like this. Here's the women down here. All of a sudden, we rose up and got power, but we kind of went too far.
Yeah.
And ridiculously too far. And then that made things out of balance again. But I think now that everything's starting to come back, because those women can hear the call that we need to make things proper and start living proper again, and we need to stand up and start speaking it. And the men are the same. They know there's a proper way of living, and we need to wake up, get up, and start arranging this for, because we're getting shook. Everything's getting shaken. Do you remember I heard a prophecy where the whole world would shake? Len, I know that automatically thinks it's an earthquake, but really when you think about it spiritually,
it's more like an impact.
It's
right?
Everything's shaking. Yeah, we're in the shake right now.
Yeah. I think it was Jay Widener was talking about the situation with men and women. He just did a podcast, and he does a lot of this kind of stuff, and he said that it's important the women have power, and he said, and he thinks that the men are starting to listen, that they're doing better, that before the men, these were his words, that men had been a little bit more aggressive and violent, and it was not helpful, right? And that he feels like they're willing to listen now, and that the women are kind of coming in, like you said, there's going to be this balance. And we have to work together. And I think, again, that's all of this advertising that they're doing, like all these different layers of human beings now, all these different versions. They don't want the female and the male to come together. They don't want, that's very powerful
Inequality.
energy.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the sexual energy that comes together with that, you know, and how that manifests. I mean, there's just so many things that they've corrupted that makes everything hum on this planet, or the humanity hum, and the
Mhm.
spirituality hum, and at work together. So, and I'm not picking on anybody. I mean, I think
No,
being
but
part of the women's lib, I think we went too far over. I do, and I think we
Yeah.
needed to swing
I
back.
agree. I agree.
yeah, we do. We need a bit more of what
Gentle.
we have. Gentleness, compassion, great. Yeah, it has to
Well,
balance
is that
out.
not where things kind of swerved off course in the
Yeah.
1930s and 40s with this woman feminist movement? I can do it. You know, well,
But that
why
was
was that pushed on us? It was pushed on us because the war had destroyed our 25-year-olds.
Yes, that's right.
We're
And they sent the
gone.
men to war, so the
Yeah,
women had to make the weapons. We were still
exactly.
involved in it, but we
Yeah,
were helping make the
yeah.
weapons and the planes. And then the men
And
came home and they
bagging the
sent us
food and the
home.
medicines. Yeah,
And it's like, okay, well, we want you to go back to being the little slaves now that you were.
right.
And everything got all screwed up. And the 50s were kind of an interesting bag. In some ways, they were innocent, but in some ways, there was a lot of angst because women lost their power. Here they
They
had taken
did.
care of the families and brought in
They
money and
did.
worked and had a lot. And in fact, when the men came home from war, the women had to leave the colleges so the men could go back and get their degrees. There was a lot of the way it was handled.
Unbalanced energies,
It's like, yeah, right.
chaos. Yeah, chaotic energies
Yeah,
from
we're
the
gonna use
unbalance of
you,
it.
slave chicks,
Right,
take our
right.
weapons, and then when this is over, you folks can go back home and pop out kids and clean the house and cook.
Well,
That's all.
that brings up exactly the whole marriage thing that I was hinting to
Right.
earlier. It's a mentality right now that if you sign that license certificate as a woman, you are viewed as an owned piece of property.
That's
From
right.
that point on, you're an entity that is owned.
well, you are
Yeah,
because
and
if you
only
follow
as the
where the
woman. It doesn't happen that way on the other side. Like there's a major unequal balance here.
Malia, if you follow where the paper actually comes from, it comes to it go back in history to the dowry. So
Right.
when a man married a woman, he went to the
Exactly.
father because the father actually sold her to the man with a
Yep.
dowry. So here's my daughter and here's extra
Which
whatever
is,
on top
yeah,
of it. Whereas in other cultures, it can be the other way around. You want to marry my daughter, you've got to give me 100 horses and 5 cows or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
So it varies, but still, you're still kind of selling the woman. If you notice in their law, you're not selling the woman. The woman has a choice. If she doesn't want to get married, she can go and join the mothers and take care of things from a higher spiritual level.
Yeah.
And what I like,
Priestess part.
yeah, what I liked is the young girls, they have the choice to do that. And if they want to become mums and that energy kicks in them, they say to them, oh, that energy's coming up in you. That energy, that to have babies and that is no good in certain areas because it involves the lower chakras and, there's only one way to have babies. So you can't have that mixed with that higher spiritual energy. So
Right.
the mothers, you've got the older women and the young women that aren't in that energy. In our culture, it's very similar. You got the young women, the older women are allowed to do things that the middle-aged women that are still can have babies can't do because that energy's still running on them, and you don't want it to taint the spiritual work that you're doing. So, and it allows women to say, yes, I want to be a mum and have 100 kids, or no, I don't want to have kids. I want to have my own life and do things. And that allows it, and that's really important and gives the respect back to women to say, hey, you're an individual being just like anyone else and you have a right to choose your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of being sold off or pre-arranged marriage. So pre-arranged marriage is way before getting sold off at the at the altar, getting sold away. prearranged. You're sold at birth.
Mhm.
You have no say in it.
Yeah, and that's the Christian roots. That's the Puritan roots that we were talking about earlier. That and even English, which is Christian based, Christian identity, essentially, of marrying families for the wealth of it, for the background of that family, the convenience of, okay, he has had 5 daughters, she's the prettiest of them all, this is how much she costs, goes to the father, and the father's family maintains the wealth, and she's sold off into the family that now has an agreement between the two families that possibly they didn't have before.
Right.
So there's, yeah, I like this. I think that it sets forth a lot more of understanding of what the proper way a community should function. And so women don't lose their minds, because we're built a certain way. You know, in each one of us who have been in dedicated relationships that failed or was broken in some way, it's like, and even not so, even if you managed to make it through, you still had massive problems, because you, as a woman, we cannot be happy, comfortable in a place where we feel like a cage with a locked door on it. We're always going to feel like we're in a cage with a locked door on it.
Yeah.
You know, so those kind of relate. And the stronger the woman, what I see is she just won't tolerate it. She might do it for a while, but she's going to break free, and she's going to walk away from that relationship or that toxicity, you know, and not become the victim. Because
I've always felt that it was such a shame we're on an entire planet where most of the citizens are not valued, they're not
Right.
respected, and
Me
they're
too.
treated like slaves and entities that are, it's like there's no respect. And it's like, well, go ahead and pop out a kid then. You know, go ahead, do that without me.
Fine.
And that's not valued either, you know.
Right.
And that's, to me, it's always been the most heartbreaking thing, is we were very I personally think very lucky to be born in America on some level, and probably Australia, hopefully, where you felt like you had a shot at being respected, you know, and being treated with, you know, having,
Well, in our general time, right? In our general
in our
portion
time
of
zone,
time
yeah,
that
just in
we
our time zone, yeah, that's what
are
I'm,
in right now. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I totally get that.
we were lucky to have that, but that's sad.
Opportunity to
That's
grasp
sad
it.
in itself. And I think the other thing that drives me crazy about being a woman is that you have to know where you are every minute of every day. You don't get to walk around at night. You don't get to be on a beach at night. You don't get to do things like that, because
I
essentially
do.
you're not safe.
I walk, I walk around at night.
But for the most part, Luna,
I
most
got
of
this
us,
theory, Sharon. Only crazy people do things at night. So if I walk around at night, I'll be safe.
but I think you understand what I'm saying. In other words, if you talk to most men, they don't worry about junk like that. Whereas we need to know where our car is, what time it is, the keys in our hands, or walking to our
The
car.
keys,
You have to have an awareness.
the details, the
Yeah.
very much of the details. And for some of us, the more details that there are to keep track of, kind of the happier we get. You know, I mean, I keep track of hundreds of different colors of teeny tiny little beads, and that makes me happy. I like all their little boxes and their colors and their ways, you know, and what I can build with that. It's just the way of women, right?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things about us, I think, that are really amazing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just would like to see those things healed. That's all I'm saying. Those are the things
Brought into the light.
brought
Yeah. Brought
into light.
into the
Yeah.
prismatic sense of what the crystal can do. What we see, what happens when light goes through that crystal and the prism and the fragments, because every single one of us have this uniqueness. There's no sameness in us in the sense of like we look exactly machined exactly the same. We all do things the same way. No, that is not how our race of being is. And that's the beauty of it, no? The uniqueness of each personality and the coming together and how all our brains can't comprehend it all. But when we add a bunch of us together, suddenly our brain powers are higher. Our elevations are higher. We've raised the vibrations and can continue on through
No, when
the
sometimes
next
we all
following
come
coming
together,
week.
we're like the robot from Short Circuit. Need more input.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I know.
I'm getting flashes of Wally.
Yes.
Oh,
Wally,
I can see that totally happening if we follow a certain pathway. Like it's already starting to happen. You see people hooked up to their machines, practically eating fast food because they're sitting in front of the screen all the time.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or you're in your office sitting in front of the screen all the time. Now you've got home studies, which you sit in front of the screen all the time, homeschooling. When school goes off because of a certain thing happening in the world and everyone has to stay home, sitting in front of it. Yeah, and that's what I actually bought. I thought, all that's missing is our floating chairs where you can put your drink.
With our slushy drink, you know.
And then we'll be set.
Bionic me.
And we're not touching the ground and everything will grow. But they live in like a floating hotel or something.
Well, I mean, isn't that another part of Atlantis is they had everything done for them. They actually, I think it was Dark Journalist was talking about the guy that did all of the psychic readings. What's his face? Talked
Casey.
about, yes, and Casey talked about these robots from Atlantis.
Yeah, the automatons.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff
Well, I
revolving that
mean,
because
the automatons, and that's what we're slowly becoming.
That's right.
well, it goes right
And
back into the
creative.
airship mystery and
Right.
the machines of time travel.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. But I
Very
find
fun.
that fascinating
Me
that,
too.
that was happening in Atlantis too. That's the first time I've actually heard that. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I hadn't heard that quite that way.
Well, it's in the Maya artwork. It's in the pyramids. It's in Ekbalam. You can see the remnants of it still in some of the stelas, especially the stela found in Koba. The stela found in Koba is of the warrior queen, and it's probably the oldest and tallest one that we found so far. And it's right off the coast of Akumal, so think Cancun, a couple of hours away from Cancun. So on the beach is this huge, their tallest pyramid. It's a little bit different than things like Chichen Itza and Uxmal. But there they found the stela that describes the whole story of the warrior queen princess. And this is the same linking story of what we're reading over here in the book we've talked about tonight, the OERA LINDA. That gives the connection that the archaeologists aren't willing to look at. I think that the intellectuals aren't willing to make this connection, but I can definitely make this jump because there's something so unique about that stela. There's none other like it. And this warrior queen has a very clear description. Her face is on it, her regal dress, what she looks like, how she has her battles, what her laws are. It's the full front and back, the whole story, and her whole image. It's 8 feet tall. It's huge.
Whoa.
Filled with Maya glyphs and
Yeah.
what's left of them. A little bit of erosion and stuff, but it's the same exact time era as this book, the 1500.
Wow.
And that's Koba, and it could easily be the entrance or the pillar city gate to come into where you would enter into the interior part of the peninsula, what is now only the Gulf of Mexico water, what we're believing would be Atlantis itself, or Atlantan.
Atlantis would be off the coast of Cuba.
That is Yucatan.
Well,
That is Gulf of Mexico.
For some reason, I'm in different think mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that entire big, huge circle piece of land, the Gulf of Mexico, being land. And on top of it, right in the middle of it, essentially, is that crystal pyramid. Completely surrounded by volcanoes.
Yeah.
Because we look at where Palenque is in Chiapas, and that's all volcanic area. So it would have been very jungle-like, very, very beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous when it came to its riches. Crystal, jade, gold. Amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I wonder if that's why they let Castro do his gig, because he made sure that nobody got in there and figured out what it was. What Cuba is, what Cuba is protecting.
What Cuba is protecting, what Guatemala, parts of Latin America. Yeah, I totally agree, because we sent a big group of archaeologists from Princeton and different universities. Sylvanus Morley is a really big name back then down there to do certain types of research. And what did they do? Morley sold what he found on the black market.
Well, ladies, I hope you enjoyed.
Are you ready?
I'll wrap this up now because we're 2.5 hours. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, I was done.
So yeah, so everyone, sorry I didn't pay too much attention to you listening there because I was too busy reading most of the time. I hope you enjoyed that little presentation. I encourage you to please read the book if you're a reader. And any rounding up thoughts, ladies? I'll start from the bottom this time. Nano girl won't pick on you.
What do you have any plans for next week? Do we have a topic or anything?
I'll come up with something. Yeah.
Okay.
Creator will give it to me.
Yeah, be sure to share it with me because
that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, okay, you can be done. Jules, any random thoughts on the OERA?
Yeah. My thoughts. I want to thank you again for having me on. And the book, I'm definitely going to have to go back and download this and print it and bind it and have it on hand, because it seems like it's something that I would want to pick up and look at and think about and come back and kind of reassess things and see how that resonates with me. And also it just to have something that's there should you want to pick up and read something on a cold winter's day. A good stay in the bed under the blankets, listen to whatever, and have something to read.
I agree.
So I'll definitely have some good reading in the foreseeable future.
Well, perhaps we can do that, ladies, if we do find any free time and we want to read the rest of the story, we can read it and perhaps come back at another time and talk about where all those things come from and who the characters are, the maidens and all that, because it explains all that, and we'll talk about that. So that'd be nice. And Sharon, any random thoughts?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for tonight. This was great, and really appreciate all the knowledge of everybody. And I hope that we are walking towards a healing, that boundaries are important, rules are important in the sense of bringing the community together, and the community agrees and agrees at a very high level. It's not a petty level, it's a very high consciousness level, because what this does is create a opportunity of growth and safety for everybody in this environment, and people can love each other. They'll be safe enough to love each other. And maybe that's the word I was coming to, is We want to feel we're building community where we're all safe enough to be what we are and who we are, and what we can, and then unfold what we came here to do. Because I think all of us have gifts, we have secret sauces which make us up, and we want to feel like we're in an environment to grow and to bring that into the community, right? Whatever it is we have, we want to share that, because that's what makes us valuable, and that's what makes us a part of this community. And then you don't have homeless, and you don't have helplessness, and you don't have all that stuff. Instead of all this dysfunction, you have love and healing and hope. And it's an environment where you cherish the young ones, the kids. You know, you are the village raising the kids, like in the 50s. Like all of the moms were there. They all raised to get the kids together. That was an important part of it. You could go to anybody's house. If you needed some food, somebody would feed you. And
there wasn't all the judgment.
Right. They all knew you. So yeah, it would be nice to be able to create. And I'm more focused on the little ones, that we bring in the little ones and help them understand why they're here. And be a part of their journey when they're so young. So thank you for that.
Important.
I agree. Thank you, Sharon. And I look forward to more yarns like this. And I want to thank you for listening and watching.
Yes.
And thank you, ladies. We'll do more of this. So yeah, there you go. Another Saturday over. We'll see you again next time. And remember, I want to thank Creator and our ancestors and the Mother for the wisdom and knowledge that has passed through the ages and still exists today and is accessible to us, so we can find the proper way of living. So on that note, love to you on this day. Remember your love. Creator loves you. Yalu, and we'll see you next time. See ya.
Yeah, Yalu.
Yalu.